Good afternoon, my friends. Once again, it's 2 o'clock and it's Monday, the start of a week, and once again, it's snowing. So, wow. Welcome to another day. We're here now into the second week, starting what will be the first full week of Lent. A period of discernment, a period of when you, if you do decide to take advantage of it, you can receive strength from knowing that others around you are also doing something a little different, doing something a little extra, something that helps to deepen our sense of relationships with each other and with God. And I keep trying to summarize this, I think, in terms of our own Christian discipline, and it's shared by many other religions of the world, that our first and best step is to take a look at ourselves with God's grace, to see ourselves, and then to begin to make commitments and directions for where we want to go. What we want to do, comparing our lives, finding out what makes us really unhappy and then stop doing it. What makes us have a sense of fullness of life and embracing that. We're human beings, we're kind of funny creatures. I don't know what goes on in my dog's brain, although I think it's much more active than I ever gave them credit for. I don't really know what goes on out there in nature. But I do have a little bit, there it comes. I do have a little bit of insight into a human being's behavior, mine, a little bit. I'm Pastor Lou Kilgore, and this is the Pastor's Chat. So almost a year-long institution of sitting for a while on weekdays at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, taking stock of the morning, and then looking forward to the afternoon and thinking then beyond that to greater visions and greater thoughts about our lives. How are we doing? How are we doing compared to how we want to be doing? What parts can we control? What parts do we just have to give into? These are the kinds of things that come up in a pastor's chat, in a conversation you might have with a pastor in a chair like this one, seated perhaps in an office of a pastor somewhere. Maybe you would have this conversation in a chapel where you might go to sit and pray, and a concerned chaplain or pastor might come into this space and say, "Would you like to talk?" I've had those conversations. They can be very meaningful and poignant. And this is an out of the ordinary time. So we've committed this space and this time to checking in on each other, and for me trying to float up trial balloons to say, is this what's going on for you? I promised last week that this week I would spend some time on what was ultimately an outgrowth of the Methodist Church in trying to deal with the out-of-control behavior of people who were addicted to alcohol. Small groups began to form in England, and from the personal experiences of some of them shared, they began to find a pathway through a discipline of steps that would, by God's grace, lead to some sobriety and some, I was going to say power over, but it's not really power over alcohol addiction. It's just freedom from alcohol addiction. So I told you that as a model for what you might fashion in a kind of an agreement that Christian life in discipleship, walking with God, is best strengthened not by just one day blending into another, but by a day of a step, a step, a step, a step. And some evaluation, some sense of how do I do on that step. And that's kind of what I think fits in with the ethos of Lent, the 40 days of Lent. A time of self-examination, a time of confession, a time of of appealing to God for renewal in your life, the renewal of things you've lost, hopes and dreams and joys, to reconstitute you. And to know that isn't just something that happens like with abracadabra, but it can happen through a plan, a structure. And I'm one who believes that which structure is wide open. It's wide open. It's not like these commercials you see for weight loss that tell you, oh, this is the product. Come take this product, and then I find a lot of materials that seek to be supportive of people who want to make some progress. I'm highly critical. A lot of them do not help me. A lot of them do not. They just don't. They don't work for me. Every now and then one comes along that really works for me, and I celebrate it. And then I have no trouble really doing it on a semi-regular basis because it works. So today, before our time runs out, I want to do what I said I would do, and that is I want to share with you from Alcoholics Anonymous. This book I have in front of me is called The Big Book. And it's sort of the Bible of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's its author is a man named Bill W., who remains anonymous, and Dr. Bob, who were they were two people who found each other and began to work on the process of recovery from their own addiction. And so there's, in this book, chapter 5 says, how does it work? I want to read the paragraph that introduces chapter 5. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances of recovery are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders. Many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. So, in this 12-step model to serenity, this 12-step program to serenity and sobriety and serenity are very much like the words that Jesus used when he talked about, I have come to bring you fullness of life. These are words that describe human beings at our best in what can sometimes be the worst possible situations. It doesn't matter. Sobriety, serenity. You know the serenity prayer. Lord, grant me the wisdom, or Lord, grant me the power to change the things I can change. And to, wow, it's gone from me. Accept the things I cannot change. Change the things I can. And then finally, to the wisdom to know the difference between the two. That set of words, that 3-sentence paragraph, describes in many ways the core values of all of our Christian life. Changing the things we can change, accepting the things that we can't change, and then praying for wisdom to know the difference instead of spending our time in the things we can't change and ignoring the things that we can. That's sort of a companion value statement that goes along with the themes that people in recovery groups find in these steps. Now, I want you to be aware that as I read them, all the pronouns in here are we. And this is, it's important, because the kind of honesty and the kind of soul searching, the kind of commitment to make changes and to move toward the life of sobriety depends upon other people. It's similar to what I was talking about in the last 2 weeks about how you're blind to 2/3 of yourself until you have a trusted partner who can share with you thoughts, honesty, disagree sometimes with how you see yourself. So, having introduced to say that these 12 steps are not, you won't get anywhere just by thinking about them. You have to work them. There's a saying in the groups, it works if you work it. It does, but it takes that first characteristic of how it works, honesty. And I think honesty is better than oftentimes what Lent is about, is sort of a negative inventory of yourself. It's sort of, well, I got to look at all the bad things about myself and admit them, and then I don't think that's necessarily honesty. Honesty's fearless. Honesty isn't afraid to say good things about yourself either when they're good. It's also not afraid or ashamed to say, these are my shortcomings. This is why humility is so incredibly important, because without humility, we don't have the ability to have that kind of honesty. So, let me read the 12 steps. First step, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and you could put any number of things in there. That our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Wow. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all the persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to all of them. 9, made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, just to others, and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So, if you want to see a copy of this and you want to use this as a framework for what we're going to talk about this week, you can just Google it. You can search it on any search engine, just what are the 12 steps. They come up. This is not private information. I also have a copy. I sent one to someone who asked me in anticipation of today. I sent out an email. I'll send it out to you too as well. Just email me, revlouis@aol.com, and I'll send you my copy of these 12 steps for your reflection and your thoughts during this week of Lent. I want to come back and just talk a little bit about the first one. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. I think that this is a place where our journeys in Lent become real or just pretend. And that is to try to make a list of those areas of our lives where we are returning over and over and over again to the same problem. And that we've tried in the past to do something, but it doesn't work. Where are the areas in which you're powerless? Maybe you have anger issues. Maybe you are repeatedly finding yourself just effusive with anger. Step one, they say half of the problem is admitting it. So the first step in Lent is admitting the problem. It's not beating yourself up. It's just saying, I really have a food addiction. I have trouble eating when I'm hungry. I really have a very difficult time. And I've promised myself 1,000 times I'm not going to do that. And then, whoosh, there I go, back again. Excessive and compulsive consumption of alcohol, or life-destroying patterns in how you manage human sexuality, and all these things, all of these they are in the scope of the view during Lent, and our fearless inventory. In the beginning of the chapter 5, where how it works says, in order to do this, you have to have the capacity to be honest. To be honest. Not with everybody, but to be honest with yourself. One of the phrases in the thing is that denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial is real. It's a deep and abiding practice of our human lives. It's usually done in a fight or flight sense of survival. And the only remedy to denial, which is you see it, you don't see it. You hear it, you're not going to hear it. You know it, you don't want to know it. The only remedy to that is that relationship that I talked about, where other people can honestly help you to overcome it. It's not one thing then another. It's all part of a kind of a circle that makes an environment in which health and life and faith can thrive. Honesty with another person. And that kind of honesty is very hard to come by in the world we live in today. We are very distant strangers to each other, even within our own families. We are unknown. And that's where therapists come in. And the word therapist is healing. It can be enormously healing to have someone that you go to and you confide in. Maybe it's your priest or your pastor. Make sure they're reliable in terms of confidentiality, but also a therapist can be a wonderful place to go and say, listen, I got to get in touch with myself a little bit in terms of knowing how to overcome some things that have been problems in my life. This is part of our spiritual journey. This is the spiritual journey. This is where it all kind of comes together. So in the first step, we admitted it. We just didn't say it in our head, but we admitted it to someone else. I've got this issue, and I've tried everything I know how to do, and I just don't know how to make progress on it. And by the way, it's also, I think, wrecking my life. So it's Monday. We're trying to hold up really good values during the Lent. We're trying to hold up the best of our traditions of introspection and then leading to repentance. That's a big word, but it just says, I've been doing this and I'm going to walk around in a different direction. I'm going to go differently now. So I hope it's helpful to you. I hope wherever you are in your journey right now, that these kinds of thoughts and these kinds of encouragement to take steps will be helpful to you. God bless you, my friends. I will see you tomorrow, right here at 2 o'clock, and we'll be ready to think about what are some of the other steps that we can take during this season of Lent and discipline. Take out your pencil and paper and start making a note to yourself. What's one issue? What's an area that you'd like to figure out how to be more honest with yourself about? And then maybe think about confiding in someone else that you're working on it. God bless you, my friends. I know God will. And I know God will bless others through you as you listen and walk in faith with God. Bye for now.